Hey guys, how you doing today? I'm so glad you joined us. I'm with my friend, my homie, the big Phil P. We're gonna talk about his new book. I'm so stoked. Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Brewster, how you doing?
It's cold in Atlanta today.
It is cold in Atlanta. It's a myth that people think it's all warm down here. It's like 20 degrees.
But you're in your little cottage and it's warm and cuddly and you've got
I've got my leather-bound books everywhere. Yeah, I'm set.
Great, yeah, totally. So you just released a brand new book that is amazing. It's for all communications creative directors, but really, as a communication director or a creative pastor or whatever you call the person that leads that entity of your church, the real win of this book, before we even jump in, is that you get this book in the hands of your pastor and your executive pastor, so they can have a clearer and better picture of what you do and how you do it. Okay. So when you wrote this book, Phil, how did you get to that place? How did you realize, because I've read the book, it's a playbook for, I wish I would have had this book when I started in this career path, but what made you go, man, this is what I needed to write. I needed to write it this way so that pastors and executive pastors would understand the creative and the communications director, but also that it would benefit both parties.
Yeah, great question. I think the thing that drew me to write this is that I was talking to communication leaders all over the place. I was talking to creative leaders, ministry leaders like youth pastors and kids pastors and small group leaders, and then obviously senior pastors, and all of them kept on zeroing in on the same exact issues. And it was based on a foundation of realizing, okay, the church landscape has changed and we're having a hard time connecting our message and engaging people. And so really at the foundation of all those things is one core issue, and that's the most overlooked area in the church right now, and that's communication. And so that's what I wanted to do, is to try to write a book. And it took a lot more work to do it this way, but it was really important to me to write something that would apply to any church leader. If you're a senior leader, or if you feel like you're just a bulletin stuffer right now and you're just trying to get a message across, this book is for you, because really everybody has a message to communicate. And before, 30 years ago, communication was somebody's job. It was the person that was putting the bulletin together or giving a stage announcement or whatever. But really in today's landscape, communication is everybody's job. Everybody has a role to play. And so it's going to take a new playbook to do that more effectively. And we have some incredible moves that we can make in today's culture with the opportunities we have, but it's going to take a new playbook. So I just wanted to try to lay a really practical foundation for church leaders everywhere to be able to help get their message across to more people.
So that's amazing. Now, everyone communicates. Unpack that concept a little bit. A lot of times I think our teams feel the pressure of we're the communication, right? And so we either we have to be the Lord and Czar of communication, or we have to be or we're the slave to the what's being communicated. Unpack how this book helps people dig out of that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, everybody does have a message to get across. I mean, if you play the role of creating the message of your church or events of your church, or goodness, we have a pretty natural rhythm for our church all year long with Christmas and Easter and core events that we do as part of the church. And so we don't do those things just because. We do those with a plan and with a purpose. We want to see God move in those things. And so whatever your role is to play, whether you're planning the event or whether you're communicating the event, there's communication elements at the core of all those things. And I think when I say everybody communicates, I think that what people are typically drawn to is they think, okay, I've got a message to communicate, so let me just jump straight to promotion.
Yeah.
And what I lay out in the playbook section of the book is really, there's 6 different moves, 6 different plays that are really essential to communicating your message. And promoting it is just one of those pieces, and it comes after some core foundational things that you need to do. And so, ministry leaders, pastors, there's a lot of clarity that you need to bring to your message for it to ever be effective to communicate. So if you're a pastor and you're trying to get your message across to more people, there's a section there for you that's really critical to clarify your message so that it can get, so it can be more clear to the people you're communicating it to. And it can also be more clear to the people you're empowering to communicate that message, because you can be really clear and concise on what your message is and who you want it for. So
really quick, give everybody the six steps.
So there's 6 essential moves of part of communicating your message as I lay out in the communication playbook. So the first thing is to clarify your message. What I want to walk people through and encourage people to do is, before you actually start communicating that message, you should clarify every little bit of it to make sure that it's really clear before you get going into communicating it on Facebook, Twitter, stage announcements, bulletins, whatever it is. Make sure it's really clear and concise. So I walk through how to do that by establishing who your target audience is, what the win is for your message for you as a church, and also what's the win for that person that you're trying to reach. What's the win for them? What do they want as part of that message? And then walk through how to break down barriers all along the way to help communicate your message with clarity. So after that, the second thing is to craft your elevator pitch. We've all probably had that opportunity at some point where we have like 30 seconds to communicate something. And when you do that, every second matters. And really, in today's culture, we are presented with that same issue all the time, whether that's on social media or on a stage announcement, or just equipping our church with information that they can share with their friends. We have to be able to be really clear about creating a clear and concise message. And we do that through crafting your elevator pitch. And then after that, the fun really begins of brainstorming creative ideas. So I walk through a playbook from beginning to end of how you can do a creative brainstorm with volunteers, with ministry leaders, with whether it's a volunteer team or a staff of 20, gives you a playbook for how you can do that from beginning to end. And then I walk through some really practical ways that you can develop that communication plan. It's hard to be effective with communication when it's last minute. So establishing that plan, not days before, but weeks before, so that you can get your message across physical and digital communication channels, is really essential. So I walk through some really practical ideas for how you can develop your communication plan. And then the last 2 are the ones that are often overlooked or not always as effective as they could be. So walk through just the essential pieces of actually executing your plan. And what I mean by that is, what do you do as your message is taking shape and in the days and weeks before? What are some essential things that you need to be doing as you execute your message? And then at the end, this is definitely the thing that I think you and I both know that just barely ever happens, but maybe the most important piece of the communication playbook, and that's to evaluate your results. Some of the greatest lessons you can have for the future are just waiting there for you to evaluate from the message that you just communicated. So learning what worked, what didn't, if there are things that were missing or confusing, all those things are just really essential pieces that we can take out of communicating that message so that we can do a better job in the future.
Powerful. That's super powerful. So where do you see teams getting caught the most? Like through that 6-step process, where do people, what's the step that people seem to skip the most frequently? And what is the step that people get stuck on the most frequently?
I think the answer is the same for both, and that's to clarify your message. I'm amazed by how many times we communicate messages in the church because we assume that just because it's important to us, that it's important to everybody else. And I think that's a myth. We have to be really intentional about knowing who this message is for. Let's be intentional about what the win is for the person we're trying to reach. Because I think, honestly, when the longer you're in a church or part of church leadership, our tendency is often to think like a staff member, to think like, hey, if it's important to us, it will be important to the tribe that we have that we're communicating.
Right.
And I just think as there are more and more things competing for our attention, for our time, we have to be more speaking with more clarity than ever before to actually get our message across. So I think, sometimes you don't realize your message is clear until you get up and communicate it, or you see, no feedback or no engagement from the message you're communicating, and you realize, hey, I think this may not be as clear as I thought it was. And so what's hard about that is it does mean that you have to take a pause and slow down a touch before you just jump straight to promotion, right. Because it does take some time to clarify that message. There's a big difference between saying, hey, this message is for everybody, and saying, hey, we're targeting this message towards, towards young adults between 18 to 25. Well, everything changes about how you're going to communicate that message if you know that that's your target audience. The channels you're going to use for communication, the messaging, the style of your design, all that stuff. And so if you aren't doing that first, you are missing the kind of the tipping point for every other thing that's going to come after that.
Yep. That's so good. That's so good. What made you realize, man, this book is, because you lead communications teams. So what made you realize I have to write a book about this? And you had to move from being a leader to being an artist a little bit. And what was that tension like for you? How did you navigate that?
The creative side of something like this is very vulnerable. I mean, because anytime you're writing something that you want it to be useful for other people, but also useful for your own church and useful for your own thinking as you clarify your own thinking. It's a little bit of a scary feeling. But I think for me, what I had to keep in front of me the whole time is that I just wanted to help somebody with this book. And I wanted to write something that I wish I would have had when I was getting into communication in the first place.
Yeah.
I know so I always wanted to keep this picture in front of me of a young church planter or senior pastor with a young associate pastor or student pastor or whatever, and a volunteer or a communications leader at some capacity that are just sitting around at a Starbucks and just saying, hey, what do we need to rethink about how we can communicate to get our message out to more people? I had to keep focused on that because my mind was going so many different directions that I really wanted to say, I just wanted to be helpful for somebody. And so that's the win for me already. It's just hearing stories from people that are like, hey, I feel like I'm swimming in an ocean and this was a life raft. It just gave me a starting point to know how I can communicate the messages of our church more effectively.
So do you tell us one story?
Yeah.
One thing that you've heard.
Well, I can't give a name, but I mean, it was that person that I got a chance to meet at a conference that was just at the end of the ropes. I don't know what to do. My church doesn't get it. Of what it means to communicate. And honestly, I don't know how to navigate through this. I don't know how to give systems and guidelines, and I'm overwhelmed. And so I said, hey, pre-order the book and hopefully this will be helpful for you. And so I just got a message from her just recently, just saying this is a game changer for her own leadership. It just gave her some confidence of knowing hey, I know what to do now. I know how to do this. But also it gave her a bridge to the other people on her staff to be able to give them some language and give them some framework to have some common conversations around the issues that we all know intuitively, but also some of the things that I think it will give church leaders some language to be able to say, hey, what are we going to rethink about this area of how we communicate? So that for me, it's all worth it, just for that, just to see church leaders impacted by that.
Yeah. So most churches are never going to be the size of your church. And so a lot of the people watching this video today are probably like, Phil, that's great. It works for you and your church, but how does this work for me in my church? My church has 150, 250, 550 people. How does this work in my church?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said earlier, communication isn't somebody's job. It's everybody's job. And I think whether you're a church of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, you're still communicating every week. Yep. You still have a sermon to share. You still have opportunities to share. And honestly, at the foundation, even below that, Jesus gave us the call to say, go and make disciples, go and proclaim the message. And so I think at the heart of what we all are as ministry leaders, we are all communicators. We all have a message to get across. And so, shame on us if we're not leaning in to say, how do we get more effective at doing what Jesus has called us to do? And so this isn't a book for the church of 5,000 or 10,000. It will be practical for them and useful for them. But really, my heart for this is the church planners that are getting their start to say, hey, how do I not start thinking about communication when we get to our size of 200, but how do I build a foundation from that from the beginning? But also for the church that's 30 years old that are saying, hey, we were pretty built our communication strategy was built around some things that worked 30 years ago, but it's not working the same anymore. So what do we do now? And that's what I tried to do, is to try to bridge the gap between those, to just say, hey, here's a way that you can rethink wherever you are to help sharpen your message and get to more people.
Yeah. And which is why the win of this book getting into the hands of pastors and executive pastors changes everything, because it moves people from understanding this is not just a job, it's a philosophy, and it's important. As you were writing the book, what was one thing you learned? What was something that you were like, man, I didn't even know about that about myself or about the process?
Well, so I am, if you know anything about me, I'm a personality trait junkie. So I think it's really essential to know yourself before you can try to learn others. And so I make my team take personality assessments like every year. Every year they're just waiting, like, all right, what is it now? And so Enneagram is my big thing right now. It's really helped me to not only learn myself, but learn others. So I'm a type 1 perfectionist improver. The hardest part about writing something is when you're evaluating it seconds after it hits the page.
Right.
So I have so many narratives in my head of just like, hey, this could be better. Maybe we could say this more effectively. And so just for me, just getting a draft out there was so hard to be able to do it without evaluating the mess out of it. I learned a lot on that just from the own creative side of this. And honestly, I've had to push myself because I'm used to being behind the scenes. I'm the man behind the curtain at the church. So, putting myself out in this way to be able to kind of get content out there and stuff has been a stretch, but it's just been cool to see how God's used it. So I've learned a ton.
That's awesome, man. That's so great. Okay. So we're going to close up, but I want to know, what is the one biggest takeaway someone needs to have when they finish reading your book? Like, if somebody is like totally overwhelmed, they're totally stressed out, they have anxiety right now, they can't figure out how to crack the code. Mm-hmm. Where can they jump in? Like where can they just dive right to that chapter, and what's the chapter that saves them right now?
There might be different answers depending on where you're at, but what I would say is the biggest challenge I would give to any church leader, communications leader, creative leader is what I end the book with. And that's that at the end of the day, we all have one job. If you're involved in church work, church world, our job isn't to say, man, let's create cool stuff. Although that's fun. Like when we can create cool stuff, it's not to get more people. It's actually not to grow our church. Those are not the jobs that we have. And we actually have one job. And I believe that's to put Jesus on display in everything that we're doing. And I think when you are, I've never talked to a church leader that's just saying, man, I have so much time on my hands. I'm just not sure what I should be doing right now. Like, I've never had that conversation. So we're all overwhelmed. We all have more on our plate than we can handle. None of us are walking home saying, man, we got everything done on our to-do list. So it's a pretty overwhelming job in a lot of ways to say, hey, I want to help play a role in leading people to Jesus in the church. And so I think what I want people to walk away with is strategy is good. That's really important. I hope that people want to increase their metrics and reach more people on Facebook. But at the end of the day, if our focus is all on tactics, we're missing our mission. And our mission is actually, if we can focus it all on just saying, how do we put Jesus on display in everything that we're doing? Then what I mentioned in the book is that we actually empower Jesus to do what he promised to do, and that he said he will build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So it's not on us to build the church. It is on us to hustle, to work hard, to give everything we've got. But our job is not to build a church. Our job is to put Jesus on display and watch him build his church. And hopefully he can find us faithful in doing that. So I hope people walk away getting tactics. I hope they learn how to be better at stage announcements and social media and just get some really practical stuff. But at the heart of that, if they walk away saying, hey, I improved our metrics by 10%, that's not the win. The win is, how do you do all that pointing people to Jesus and everything you do? Because that's the only thing that's really going to change lives. So that's what I hope people walk away with.
So good, man. That is so, so good. All right, go get the book right now, y'all. This is my man. I trust him. I believe him. We've been homies for a long time, but not just get the book because of that. Get the book because it's a great resource. It's the book I wish I had when I started in communications and creative in the church. Like, it will help you. It will benefit you no matter where you're at and what season you're at in ministry or what size your church is. This is a resource that will help you grow and get better. Thanks for hanging out today, Phil. It means a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Brewster. Appreciate it.
Now you can leave your little cabin and go back to hunting in the woods of Lampa.
I'll see you there.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Later, bud.